Come on back. I absolutely love having the rounder circle here. Just so much. Well, not long ago, I read an article about how to be better at managing my time by using a simple exercise to figure out what my top priorities really are. Now, maybe it ought to be obvious, but sometimes I think we can all use a little help. And this article suggesting taking a very small piece of paper, just 1 inch square, and writing down on it the things that matter most to you. So what's most valuable in your life? And it said most people can only fit about 3 or 4 things on that tiny piece of paper. So let's say we have 4 things, 4 essentials that we write down on that in the order of their importance. And the idea is they ought to be, our basic priorities every single day. Now, everyone's different, but when I did this, what I wrote on my 1 inch square piece of paper was this. Number 1, Ellen, the most important person in my life. Number 2, health, and by that I not only mean my physical health, but also my mental, emotional, and spiritual health, because I believe all that's woven together somehow, but I could not cram all that into 1 square inch, so I simply wrote down health. Number 3, family and friends, and number 4 is my work as a minister. So in this exercise, you then compare that list of those most valuable things in your life to how you were actually spending your time. So that's where the pain comes in. You look at your calendar, assuming you keep track of things, or you just reflect on and review how you've been spending your time in the last week or so, and it was, for me, a harsh awakening. For me, the time I devoted to what I claimed to be the most valuable things to me was not at all reflected by how my time was really being spent. My reality was out of whack with my priorities. Now, you could say that's not fair. The amount of hours, we're just talking about the linear aspect of time, the amount of hours one spends doing something does not necessarily mean that it matters more to you. For instance, if someone is not yet retired, well, then on any given day, you might spend more time on the job than with your family. Even in retirement, though, the hours spent with family members might be limited if your family lives far away from you. But that does not mean that they're not right at the top of your list of what is most important to you. But this exercise is not designed to make anyone feel guilty, even if it had that effect on me. It's only meant to point out that we can sometimes pour a lot of our time and energy into things that we would not say are really our most valuable things for us. So at the very least, it can help us step back, and if we can, make some adjustments to our time and energy. We can start maybe moving more intentionally in the direction of the care and nurture of who and what matters most to us. Good exercise anytime. I think if we took everything Jesus ever said, and if we could sum it all up, it might be a question that we are called to answer. And that question is, what's most? If we study the Gospels carefully, Jesus always seems to be asking that question one way or another. He wanted his disciples and whoever was listening to answer it for themselves. And like a lot of people, like a lot of us, they had been told throughout their lives that some things mattered a whole lot more than others. And even though we're separated from those Bible day folks by a couple thousand years or more, not much has really changed in human nature. They were told all their lives, and we're constantly told things such as a person's value depends on their wealth or social status. Now, we might argue, oh, that really doesn't matter, but try telling that to all the passengers on the Titanic who didn't get into a lifeboat. It's really easy to say that kind of thing if by virtue of fate, by complete accident of birth, we were born white and into a middle-class family or better in the U.S. in the latter half of the 20th century or so. We don't often stop to think about how, over the whole course of human history, what an amazing stroke of luck that is. So most of us in this room, we won that lottery. But compare that relatively affluent and privileged status with someone born poor and south of the border. And then try with a straight face to tell that person that wealth or status or nationality doesn't really matter and is no obstacle to their success. If you just apply yourself and try hard enough, yeah, right. Our culture also tells us many times every day that a successful life means that we have attained property or wealth or fame or high standing in the eyes of other people. So if we lack any of that, then we're not successful or we haven't reached our full potential. Growing up, I was constantly warned about the failure that I would be, about how my life would be squandered if I did not live up to my potential. That message was so drilled into me, and I'm still trying to get that monkey off my back. Now, I believe hard work and persistence are very good values. When I hear the rounder circle play, I understand the reason they sound so amazing and on point. It is not just natural talent. There's a lot of that, but it's all the hours spent learning and practicing and rehearsing. So they're a great example of what happens with hard work and persistence. But there can also be a downside to the warning of not living up to our potential. How do you even measure something like potential? Or how about this life lesson? We're rewarded in life in proportion to how much God favors us. And that's another one I grew up with. It can be subtle, but think about the logic of thanking God when good things happen. If we're thanking God, then we're affirming that God is the source of that good thing, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But the flip side of that can be when bad things happen, when things don't go our way, then God must also be the cause of that. Or at the very least, God was asleep at the wheel or thought that we maybe needed to learn a life lesson. So along those lines, we believe we must do what we've been taught will earn God's favor, and then we will be wealthy lives. Wouldn't it be great if life was that simple? People in Jesus' day and time, and plenty of people still today, like to believe that there is a cause and effect aspect to our relationship with God. And that's what I call the God of the jukebox. Drop enough coins in, we're supposed to be rewarded with something really nice. Or at the very least, our dues have been paid. That's why some folks bother to go to church at all, to stay off God's naughty list, to earn credits for being here. Every time we hear someone refer to a heavenly afterlife as a reward, that's not just a quaint saying. It's the belief that this present life is designed as a kind of points earning system where God's love and acceptance of us is in direct proportion to how many hours we accumulate being pious or sitting in a pew. So saying the right words and thinking the right thoughts and singing the right hymns and just being here, present and accounted for, because God's up there somewhere taking attendance. Now, I'm not trying to discourage anyone from coming to church. But if that is why we or anyone we know does come to church, it's time to rethink some basic assumptions. The stories Jesus told and that question he raised over and over again challenges all of those assumptions about God's relationship to us and about what really matters most. In the parable of the Good Samaritan, it's not the holy and God-fearing people who've done the right thing. It's a heretic. It's a Samaritan. The very last person on earth we would expect, that good for nothing, who wouldn't even be welcome in church. He is the one who has his priorities straight, not the people with perfect attendance. When the prodigal son, we talked about him last week, when he comes stumbling home because he's run out of every other option, after blowing all of his father's money and damaging his father's reputation and honor and his own, the father doesn't curse him or banish him forever. He wraps him in a tearful bear hug, and then he throws a party. And when that one sheep out of 100 wanders off and gets lost, the shepherd is so persistent, he stops at nothing, defying all logic, until that one scrawny sheep is found and brought safely home. And when the laborers who showed up late at the vineyard get paid by the boss the exact same wage as those who've been working all day long? Well, that makes no sense until we realize it's the boss's prerogative to do what the boss wants to do. So it's never our concept of who's worthy and who's not that matters, really, it's God's. And to God, everyone matters. And that's the God we're dealing with, Jesus says. That's where God's priorities are. What is most valuable to God is you, just you. Doesn't matter one bit to God if you have fame or fortune, or if the world deems you to be a success or a failure, or if you've lived up to your potential or not. You can have perfect church attendance or none at all. The point is, what we actually spend our time and energy doing and pursuing is not always the same thing as what's most valuable. So there's this story we heard this morning from John's Gospel about Mary, sister of Lazarus, who's anointing the feet of Jesus with some expensive perfume that is called nard. And Judas, the disciple, he gets very upset about it. Now, nard is not what you expect perfume these days to smell like. It's also known as spikenard. It's a very strong aroma, kind of a combination of sweet and spicy and musky, very organic, very earthy. Imagine nutmeg run amok with a lot more punch to it, you know. Nard was reserved for special occasions. It is a thick amber-colored essential oil, basically, that was used in Egyptian and Jewish religious rules, and with frankincense and myrrh, the things that we hear about at Christmas time. In those days, before modern embalming practices, nard was often used to prepare a body for burial, if your family had enough money for that kind of luxury. The flower it grows from is found in the Himalayas, so Nepal, China, and India, and it only grows at an elevation between 9,800 and 16,000 16,000 feet high. And that means it was not cheap to harvest or preserve or to transport all the way to Judea by caravan. It took a long time. So according to the standards of the world, Judas, in objecting to this, was being perfectly sensible. But Mary is using such an expensive stuff to anoint the feet of Jesus? It was way too extravagant, way too valuable for that purpose. But Jesus understands what's most valuable is not the perfume. He says that by using it in an act of love and devotion, Mary understands something that Judas simply does not get, that God has a relationship with us that completely redefines what we see as valuable. Jesus had just raised Lazarus from the dead, and Jesus would be facing his own death in a matter of days. Now, of course, everybody dies someday. Our mortality, the precious nature of life, that's a big reason, maybe the reason, why we value life so much. Because we know that it eventually comes to an end. It's precious. But Lazarus being raised from the dead turned that old reality upside down and offered a sneak preview of things to come. The old assumptions about life were replaced by saying that life, your life and mine, is so valuable to God that death as we know it is not the end of life after all. And if our lives are that valuable, if we are so valuable that nothing, not even death, can hold us back from God's loving welcome and embrace throwing a party, that changes everything. Everything about how we prioritize and how we spend our time and energy. It opens us up to seeing and doing what is most valuable. It moves us closer to taking our essentials, the who and the what that we say that we value most, and living like we actually mean that. And one way we can do that is to imagine God's own small 1-inch square piece of paper, and we see written there, the most valuable thing to God. Each and every one of us. Amen.
We nurture the future God holds for us by practicing generosity. Generosity helps us to forgive and to heal. It helps us to make peace in the world